To perform a 30-30-30 reset, you're going to need something small to stick into the reset button. I just have a piece of copper wire and it has a little handle on it, so it's easier to grab. And so to perform it, all you do is first plug in the power cable, wait for the device to boot up. Once it's booted up, stick your pointed object into the reset button. Mine is on the front, and count to 30. Or in other words, hold it for 30 seconds. After 30 seconds is up, unplug the power cable and keep the pointed object in. Don't take it out and hold it for another 30 seconds. After 30 seconds is up, plug the power cable back in while holding the reset button and count for another 30 seconds. After 30 seconds is up, take out your pointed object and your device is now reset to factory settings. I recommend resetting all of your networking equipment to factory settings so you can start fresh and no old settings will be messing with your new ones. Now we're going to set up the main router and networking equipment. Find a place where all of your network cables can run into and is close to where the internet service provider cable is. Make sure the spot is solid so you can mount your equipment to it. I mounted my equipment next to the breaker panels so that way everything is in one central location and is near the ISP cable. First mount the power strip so from there you can plan out where all your other equipment can go. I first measured the holes on the power strip and then I translated that onto the board and put the screws in. Next, choose the spot of where you want your router to go. Measure the holes and then translate them onto the board with screws. I also used tape to mark where I wanted the router to go so it is easier to measure from there. After, choose where you want your switch or switches to go and measure them, then translate again. Once you have all of your measurements and holes made, it is now time to mount the equipment, so peel off your helper tape and erase your pencil marks for a cleaner look. To start off, mount the power strip and plug it in. Then mount your router and switch. I only mounted one switch for now, but will be mounting the other one later to make things easier. Now comes the fun part, running all the cables to the devices. I mounted the cable organizer at the side to make the setup look nicer, but you don't have to. I recommend putting zip ties or Velcro on your cables that have a lot of extra cable so they don't get tangled up when you mix them with other cables. Try to make this setup as neat as possible, so in the future if there ever is a problem, it'll be easier to diagnose. Once you have run all your cables, you can admire the work you have done in all of its glory. Leave space on your setup because in a later episode, we will be adding more components to it. But you are not done just yet. We have to label all the cables so in the future we can easily connect or disconnect rooms, as well as see what cable goes where. I used regular label paper and printed right onto it, or you can use a label maker. As you can see, everything is now labeled and very neat, so that means it is the perfect network setup. So now we're going to go ahead and access the router's user configuration page. And so to do that, you have to go into system settings or wherever you can to go ahead and see the network. So I'm connected to my Wi-Fi network, and to see the router, I have to go ahead and go into TCP/IP. But what I'm doing right now is trying to find where the router's IP address is. So mine is 192.168.0.1. That's typically what a router's IP address is going to be, or this 0 here might be a 1. So let's go ahead and copy that and then head over to the web browser and paste it. And this will bring us to the router's configuration page. Mine's just saying that JavaScript is not supported, all that, but it's fine. Alright, so to find the username and password for your router, just type it in here in the internet and just say, oh, Cisco default password. And then you can just go ahead and find what the default password is based on the model number of your router modem or your router, whatever the device may be. Just Google the default password and username for your router, and it should pop up if you have not already changed it, which I did. Just retype it, make sure I did it right, and then we're going to log in. The first thing that I changed right away was the password to access the configuration page. Because, like I mentioned before, you can just Google the default password and username to access your router. So go ahead and change that to something that you'll remember. Do something that you can consistently do for all your networking equipment. So for example, for me, I have my password is the same. For example, this password that I entered here, it's the same thing for all my networking equipment. So that way I don't get confused from device to device. So that way they're all the same and I just have to type in one set of credentials for everything. The second thing that I configured was the SSID. So I changed it from default to K-Wi-Fi. It's just what I like to call the Wi-Fi network. I would change this to something that you'll remember because this will be used quite a bit in the Smart House series. For example, you're going to have to type this in for all your Wi-Fi modules to turn your light switches on and off. And the second thing I changed was the password. I would have a WPA or a WPA2 personal password and TKIP plus AES. These two settings combined is a very, very strong form of encryption, and you want a decently long password. These two things, the SSID and the password, are going to be very, very important throughout the Smart House series, so make sure you know it. Another thing that's also going to be important is that you should know your router's IP address. So your 192.168.0.1, that's very important. So that way you can access your router and see what other devices' IP addresses are. And those are the only 3 things that I changed in the main router. And then you just go ahead and hit save settings.